All right, so today's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Georgia Bulldog Day means we had to get my man Rusty Mansell, Dawgs 247 here. College Football Hall of Fame. How
Yeah.
great is this, Rusty?
This place is great. I'm sitting here looking at Trevor Lawrence's jersey. He won the national championship, and I'm thinking about, I covered him since the 8th grade, know his family well, and so much history here. This place, if you haven't ever been, it's worth the trip to Atlanta. It's incredible. If you're a college football fan, it's really hard to beat.
You probably live here.
I've been 2 or 3 times, but I do a lot of stuff here with announcements and All-American Bowl. As I walk in this morning, I'm always reminded of that night when everyone was shocked because Eric Gilbert stood right there and picked LSU. And I remember right before he walked up to the podium, he goes, "I'm about to shock everybody."
Yeah.
And I thought, man, this guy's going to Georgia. Everybody thought he was going to Alabama. I thought this guy's about to go to Georgia. And when he said LSU, I mean, the entire place was like, what is going on? And, Shea Dixon, our guy from LSU, very connected there. I remember him telling me the story afterwards. LSU didn't know they had a GA that had to run onto the field during practice to tell Ed Orgeron that Eric Gilbert had just committed to him. So that part, a lot of history here in this place, but it's incredible.
Now, it's funny that you bring him up because I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
What's the expectations for him this year? Because I know Kirby, he was trying to pump the brakes a little bit after his big spring game.
Coach speak.
Yeah.
I've said this about Eric, and he's dealt with some off the field stuff, and he's a young man, and people grow up with different things now. They face different things than when I grew up. I think Eric Gilbert, if he is 100% ready to roll, he is the best jumbo athlete I've ever covered. I've watched him since he was an 8th grader, and I know that Kirby Smart and that staff would have to say, let's pump the brakes, but it's hard to look at somebody like that in that spring game, knowing what I know. And also he has a very talented room, so how many balls does he get and those type of things. But I know when Eric Gilbert is on the field, it's a concern for the defense. You have to know where he is at all times because of the size and ball skills of him.
Now, this may be wild to even consider, Rusty, but Georgia's going to be top 5. Obviously, head coach is back, starting quarterback, great offensive coordinator.
Yep.
A lot of I know they lost a lot.
Yeah.
But is Georgia even as a top 5? Are they being overlooked because everybody's looking at Alabama and Ohio State as the 2 playoff contenders?
Possibly, yeah, but because it's going to be so much dominated in Alabama, and rightfully so. I mean, they're absolutely loaded. Then Ohio State, you got a superstar in C.J. Stroud and all the guys back there. But I think Georgia is so different this year because I expect the offense to really be explosive. I mean, they got so many players there with Stetson Bennett another year. We could talk a whole hour on Stetson Bennett, but here's what I'll say about him. He should be even better this year. He's been in every big moment you can be in. And regardless of what you think of Stetson Bennett, when Georgia needed him the most, the guy was 7 for 7 in that fourth quarter and when they were down.
Right.
And he went out and made a couple plays that, helped them win the national championship. So how much more does he develop? But offensively, I expect Georgia to be really good as those young guys on defense grow. Now, where will Georgia be in December? I don't know, but going into the season, they should be considered, in my opinion, a playoff team.
Yeah, and speaking of Stetson, I was going to ask you because it sounds like Kirby's already got that on his mind. He's already firing off some shots here.
Yep.
Someone told me, I don't know if this is accurate, but I think he's 7 years older than Oscar Delp. So, I mean, he's like a coach on the field. They need him to be that guy.
Yep.
He's going to be a leader. But who are the other leaders for the Georgia Bulldogs?
I have heard the alpha. And it doesn't surprise me because I've known this, but I have heard the clear alpha of that team is Nolan Smith. I mean, if you're not doing it in practice, Nolan's going to have a conversation with you, and it's probably not going to be PG rated. He's an alpha guy. I've known Nolan a long, long time. He's a very vocal type kid, outspoken, high energy person. But, he came back to Georgia for a reason. And I think this is a year for, you see a player that many considered maybe the number 1 player in the country coming out in 2019, I believe. So you look at Nolan, he's all about business, and this team is kind of his responsibility. So Stetson is a guy. Cedric Van Pran here today is a guy. But you look at a guy like Nolan Smith, and you want to talk about having an alpha in the locker room, you've got one in Nolan Smith.
Now, it was always getting over Alabama.
Yeah.
And they said the right things, but they could never do it.
Yep.
Now they beat them in the only game that really mattered last year.
Yep.
So Are they looking at it in that building as, hey, we got 12 games to get ready for Alabama and confidence going in? Because I don't know about you, Rusty, but there's very few teams that beat Alabama. But we've seen Clemson do it. We've seen Ole Miss do it. Now A&M. When you beat Nick Saban and you get over that mountain, it seems like these teams do it. They can do it 2 times in a row. What's the confidence level that Georgia, by the end of the year, could do it again if they have to?
I think being around a locker room quite a bit as I have in past, fans tend to look more toward December. These kids know it's a gauntlet to get there. So they'll worry about Alabama if they play them in the dome. But Georgia's schedule, opening up with Oregon and Dan Lanning, who knows this team. He knows exactly what Kirby Smart's going to call in this formation, what Kirby Smart wants his staff to do. And, Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann and those guys making calls. So I don't think that Georgia's looking at it going, hey, we're going to get Alabama again. They probably know if we take care of business, we're going to get another shot at them. But certainly you got to have some confidence going in, going, hey, we beat these guys before. Let's go at it and see if we can get them again.
He answered that like he's been coached up by Kirby, didn't he?
Well, you know what? I've been around it, and I've been around a ton of coaches. But I do know, knowing these players, that they look at, hey, we got a long way to go before we get there. So high school kids are like, they'll circle one like, hey, we won't get this team in round 2. But my experience with college kids, they know, look, especially in the SEC, it's a damn grind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a freaking grind. You look at Arkansas, Coach Pittman just talked about that. 3rd year in a row, #1 schedule, toughest schedule in the country. They're not looking at game 9. They got Cincinnati and South Carolina in the first 2 weeks. That's where those kids are focused at.
Well, speaking of the player mentality, I did want to ask you this, because we know Kirby learned from the master.
Sure.
He knows what it takes to put that behind him and gear up all offseason for another championship run.
Yeah.
But it's new to all these players.
Sure.
And they can say all the right things.
That's right.
But, do you think it gets to their head at all that we're out here, we're getting all these NIL deals, we're the greatest thing?
Yep.
I mean, I think Stetson Bennett, when his time's done, he may have a statue outside that stadium.
Well,
and he's earned it, you know?
Yeah, well, it's player-led. How that locker room. Kirby and those guys can do all this training, and they can have Scott Cochran's on that staff. All these guys, Glenn Schumann's on the staff. All these guys have been through that at Alabama. They know how to treat the offseason. End of the day, it's those players. What are they saying in the locker room? What can those leaders say? Look, we're not worried about last year. They're going to talk about it today because they have to, but I guarantee you after today that there's not going to be a discussion around those kids like that thing is done. And certainly Georgia, they enjoyed it. It's everywhere, and it should be.
Yeah.
They waited a long time to celebrate that, but it won't be just Kirby speak. To me, that question to be answered later on, but it's player-led. Who's handling business in the locker room? Who's keeping this group focused on, hey, don't worry about NIL right now. We got a season to play.
We do a show on every team, and
Sure.
where we try to say, okay, this is the best possible scenario.
Sure.
One of the last things that we've done in Georgia, because it seems like a waste of time. But I want to ask you, when you're looking at this schedule, is there a team or 2 teams that you're like, be careful with this program?
I think 2 teams are Kentucky and Tennessee, and I think that Georgia has handled Kentucky pretty good, even though they've been a lot better. But I think Tennessee, with Hooker coming back, a second season under Josh Heupel, I think you look at them because they're such a different dynamic. And I actually went back and watched a little bit of the Ole Miss game and a little bit of the Georgia game. There was a lot of cramps on the defensive side, and I'm sure that Josh Heupel in the offseason tried. I don't know how you fix that, but you look at the Ole Miss game, they set the world record in the history of football for cramps.
Oh, we were there.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, man, this is a little cool for the cramp season, but you got to do something different, and maybe that's what teams are doing because Tennessee is so fast, and they create such an issue for you. And now you got a quarterback in his second season in this thing. I think somebody picked Tennessee to beat Georgia the other day. It might have been Brad Crawford. It might have been one of our 24/7 guys. And it caused a stir on my board. And I thought, I'm not picking Tennessee right now, but I'm telling you right now, that game's going to be one to watch because of the pace of Tennessee and how much better they are in year 2.
Well, watching it, because I'm a Tennessee homer.
Sure.
I grew up
Yeah.
Suffering a long time.
That's why I have no hair. But when you're watching the balls,
Sure.
there was a couple of teams, Alabama and Georgia,
Yeah.
that didn't have the cramps.
Yeah.
It was almost a
Yeah. Yeah.
stay in that type of game. It sneaks up to them in that regard.
Listen, coaches, they'll never say it, but any advantage they can use, they're going to use it.
Yeah.
And don't think a couple teams didn't have some cramps against Tennessee. And I know if I'm Heupel, I'm raising you-know-what in the offseason, like, here's the tape, man. And 4 plays later, this guy miraculously is pressuring my quarterback.
Right.
He couldn't breathe. They life-flighted him off the field 2 minutes ago, and now he tackles my back for a loss, you know. I don't know how to address that, but I know that coaches will use any advantage they can get within the rules. And Tennessee creates a different scenario because it's so fast-paced. I mean, people talk about running. You want to run so many plays. You want to get the line of scrimmage. You know, Hugh Freeze was big with that at Ole Miss, and it took Alabama, and they beat Alabama twice, you know, with that fast-paced deal. So Tennessee is a team I'm interested to see if they take that next step, and I do think they will this year. But when Georgia faces Tennessee, I think that's the game in the regular season. I want to see, hey, can Georgia handle that scene in the second time? It's almost, to me, like a major league pitcher. You know, you see that guy one time. Now, what's the scouting report next time you face this guy, you know?
Well, my last question here is, you know, there's a lot of sexy names down there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I mean, we're talking about them all day.
Sure.
But at the end of the season, it seems like there's always 1 or 2 players in Georgia's roster who just pops. And next thing you know, we're talking about the next great Bulldog.
Yeah.
Who is that person for these guys?
I think a guy that obviously was a heavy recruit. Tennessee was involved with him at one time. Ty Ingram Dawkins is a defensive lineman out of Gaffney, South Carolina. Actually saw him practice in high school, and he was kind of a young, baby-faced kid. You know, he wasn't going to play last year because of those, you know, freakazoids they had on the defensive line. You know, when you're playing behind Trayvon Walker, you're not getting a lot of bump. You know what I mean? But it sounds like a year in the weight room, what he's done. I think this is a guy that's going to take the next step. And I think as we look forward, if we fast forward next year, we're sitting at this table like, hey, that guy was hell on wheels as a young defensive lineman. You know, I think Kenny Milton's a guy that's going to take. Kendall Milton is a guy that's going to take a next step. Kenny McIntosh is those 2 running backs of Georgia. They really need those guys. So, you know, you look at those guys. Obviously, you talk about Eric Gilbert, kind of a quote-unquote new name. Oscar Delp may not get those reps this year that creates that, but I promise you right now, that team is aware of him. It's another 6'5" tight end. So Todd Hartley, follow Todd Hartley on Instagram. He just put a big, nice pool in his backyard, and he keeps doing those, signing these 5-star tight ends. The dude's probably going to be in a different neighborhood in a couple of years.
Seriously, we had a show that top 5 tight ends. Mike almost had all 3 of Georgia's.
Hey, last thing I got for you,
Yeah.
Rusty. You're one of the best in the recruiting world across the country. Mario Cristobal, now down at Miami. You know, he recruited gangbusters at Oregon.
No doubt.
And Georgia, Florida, you know, these are programs that cherry-pick down there.
That's right.
Could that hurt them? And could it hurt the Florida Gators? I think that's the one to really look at, because I think Mario Cristobal, you know, he may have his hand pickings of players down there.
Think about this. Think about the number of players that's Alabama the last couple of years from South Florida. Patrick Surtain, all those guys, you know, all the wide receivers they've gotten out of South Florida, not only for Georgia, Tyson Campbell and all those guys. That's a big deal. Yeah. If that gets, let's say it gets 65, 70% shut off, because Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson were going into South Florida and getting dudes. And if Mario can continue the pace of what they're doing now, it's going to make things a lot more difficult for especially Georgia and Alabama, because they've done really well in South Florida. So it'd be interesting to see. College football is better when Miami's better, you know, and USC looks like they're going to take. So all this I get a million questions about NIL. 2 things I want to see. Where are we a year from now, and where are we with these W-2s? What did you actually get?
Yeah.
What did you actually get? You know what I mean? So I think a year from now, with all these rumors of millions, it may be right, but until I see a W-2, until I hear about a W-2, I want to see what the real market is, because right now I had a college coach tell me, major college coach, assistant coach, tell me a couple weeks ago, he goes, Rusty, this is monopoly money. I mean, who knows if these kids are actually going to get it. But I guarantee you this, if they sign and don't, it won't take long for it to get out.
Right.
Because that portal will be hot.
Hey, on your way out the door, Rusty, tell the folks where to find you and everything going on at Dawgs 247.
Yeah, Dawgs 247 on 24/7 Sports. It's been there for 12 years now. I was there day one. Wow. It was crazy. I don't think I've ever told anybody this story. Like, I had like 4 burner accounts the first 2 weeks. I'm having conversations with myself. I'm like, hey, Rusty, what about this guy? Well, he's great. I really like him, And so those days are way gone. Now I have like family members post, hey, man, y'all post on the board day. Just give me anything. Good buddy Gentry Estes. We started the first day, and I remember going, damn, that was kind of slow. But those days are long gone. It's a massive, massive site. And, anywhere on social media, Mansell 247. And high school football, I love high school football in the state of Georgia, so I get to do just – crazy as it sounds, I'm doing 35 games on TV, and
you're keeping it in the family. Your daughter's in it.
My daughter,
too, right?
Yeah, Kaylee's helping you. It's funny. She's in L.A. right now doing a training thing with the L.A. Chargers, and she's so pumped.
She'll be passing you up before you know it.
I told her, I said, listen, now, I got to pay for your wedding. If you take my job, it's not going to be open bar. I can promise you that. It might be a 6-pack of Coolers in the bag, but if you want open bar one day, you can't take Dad's job. So she's enjoyed it. I have never made one call for her.
Really?
She's done this on her own, and certainly I'll help her in any way I can, but she's carving her own path. Very, very proud of her and look forward to it. Thank God she's a lot prettier than me. So she's got the face for TV for sure.
Well, thank you very much,
man,
Russ.
Appreciate
we'll cut
it
right there.